Great, thank you, and I didn't even do anything yet. Welcome, and thank you to Andrew. Thanks for the great people here at Puffin who've done such a great job helping us and promoting the event. And the artwork is really incredible, so take some time later to check it out. So who doesn't like owls? Anybody? No, and the room is full because people love owls, and we're not even sure why people get, why they're attracted to owls, why they're fascinated with owls, but a lot of reasons that we'll talk about. We'll talk about a lot of the owls that can be seen in our area, and maybe how you could see them, and a little bit about them, and maybe some owl species you didn't even know existed. So this is a little about us. We're a Bergen County Audubon Society, the local chapter of the National Audubon Society, and we're all volunteer organization. And we do everything we do is free nature walks, free everything, all big events. And we'll be out here Sunday morning if you want to join us for a walk at 10 a.m. doing a nature walk. So come out and join us and have some fun. All right. So let's see if we can get this to go one. There we go. That's us. Come on, you. There we go. Owls of New Jersey. Owls of Bergen County, New Jersey. So let's talk about some of the little bit about the owls themselves. Some are year-round residents. Some are here all the time. Some only here in the winter, and we get occasional rare visitors too, which are pretty cool. Come on, there we go. So this is what makes owls unique. Round wings and how you can identify them. Usually flat face, eyes are forward, and that's the family that they're in. Now let's talk about the eyes and ear holes that are specific. We go over that. The eyes are not, they can't move their eyeballs, but they can certainly move their heads. Not all the way around, some people think, but almost all the way around. And their ears, ears would make them special. Let's see if I can get the next slide here. No, it's a little slow. There we go. But now, so here's the feathers. So this is how you could identify an owl feather. You pick it up and you see those little ridges at the ends, and they're little barbs, and that's what makes it silent. So it's really a silent killer. And so if you took that owl feather and did this with it, you would never hear it. So you can imagine being a nice little mouse on the ground who would never know what hit him because of those silent feathers. Yeah, so that's that's how you get, and you put the feather and do this right next to your ear, and you really never hear really anything. And their ears, that's what makes them really special. So the eyes could see almost in total darkness, but not really total darkness. But their ears are offset, right? Their ear holes, one up here and one down there. And the reason that's like that is because so they can triangulate on their prey. So even if it's under the snow, it's under the leaves, it's really dark, they know exactly where it is, right? And the problem that they have is on rainy nights. That's the real problem because they really can't hear their prey on a rainy night. So sometimes you'll see the owls hunting in the morning when it's been a real rainy night and the rain stops, so this way they can see it. And that's the business and those talons. And that's what those beaks are really just made for tearing. That's not what's killing the prey. It's those things which are like daggers. And an owl has very weak stomach acids. So if it could swallow a mouse whole, whatever it could swallow whole, it'll digest it to a point, but it can't digest the hair and the bones, and it'll regurgitate it up in a pellet. And if you're lucky enough to find those pellets, now some people are a little queasy, don't like doing it, but since I grew up doing that, it's just fine. And you can open them up and see what the owl has eaten. And other animals make pellets too, so some hawks and even egrets or herons will make a pellet, but the owl pellets are really distinct. And that's one that I found, I think at River Barge Park over in the Meadowlands. Little mouse skull and some little bones, that's really tiny. And that was probably a barn owl pellet. So here's some owl ethics. So we all want to see owls. So before we go out and go out on your own, or you're with us and see owls, there's some things that you don't want to do. First of all, you want to enjoy them. And that's always the thing, it's to show somebody an owl is you get an epiphany and you love birds forever. But you show the wrong person an owl nest and they have all the neighbors there disturbing it and they end up abandoning the nest. So they're very vulnerable to disturbance, whether they're roosting or nesting. So visit infrequently and be respectful, keep a respectful distance. If you have a camera, take a quick picture, then move on. And really try not to tell your buddies or, I know it's hard, but, And that was my first owl. Probably, I'm not sure, but probably was. And of course there's owl cupcakes, which are pretty good. And you may think this is just an attempt to get my granddaughter on the program, and it is. But she loves owls too. Who knew? She's just a little guy and she's fascinated with owls. And that's what happens. People are just fascinated with owls. And so why do people always ask me, Don, I never see an owl. Why can't I see an owl? I've been out for years, I can't see an owl. And I'll show you some pictures of why you don't. I probably saw owls, and you're probably close by, but maybe you didn't see them. Now that's the great horn, and that's our most common owl, and that's the biggest owl that we have for the most part, unless talk about snows later. But another name that is the tiger owl, and there's been nesting ones here at the creek, and they're a very suburban bird, and they are one of the most powerful birds from pound for pound. They are one of really, and so, there's legends about them eating cats. It's not a legend. They will eat cats. They will eat animals way much more than themselves. And they'll take down a red-tailed hawk, and we know that's our biggest hawk. And all these owls are squatters, not builders, and they don't go out and build their own nests. They don't bring materials in. So the great horns will take over a squirrel's nest sometimes, or take over a red-tailed hawk nest, a crow's nest, whatever it can find, and use them. And usually, and they're very early winter. It's not unusual to see great horned owl nests with snow on them, right? And to figure out why they nest so early, it's because it's a longer nighttime, more hunting time. And they're bigger bird, the longer they take to fledge and leave the nest, and that's why they nest when they do. So pretty soon you'll start hearing them calling to each other, and the male and female are territorial, even though they're not on the nest now, they're around that territory somewhere. And the thing is that if you have great horns in that area, you're probably not going to get any other owls. Or if you do, there might be lunch. And this is why you don't see owl, right? Now, I just happen to know where this owl likes to hang out, but you can see why you could walk right past that great horn and never even know it's there. You could be right under that tree, and it's not going to make a sound. There's another one, and the camouflage is perfect. On all these owls, the camouflage is perfect. And look at that, see that? And this is during the day, and it just, it knows I'm there, but it's what the heck. Some pine trees. And look at that, the leaves are out in the trees a little more. So they're there. And this was taken a while back, but it was a friend who actually, very rarely get pictures of them calling to each other, but appropriately, this was in a cemetery. And we would be walking by and had them calling to each other. And in the birds of prey, the female's always bigger than the male. But in the great horns, the male has a much deeper voice. Sometimes you could tell them apart that way. And you want to find owls and birds of prey, listen to the other birds. Listen to the crows, even the little birds, chickadees, nuthatches. Well, it's called mobbing. And they're not happy when there's any bird of prey, but especially the owls. There's something about the crows that really, really hate the owls. and they will go crazy trying to get rid of them. So if you're out and you hear the blue jays and you hear the crows going crazy, follow them. You're gonna find something out there, something good, and it's usually that guy. And you look for the whitewash at the bottom of the tree, and that tells you where they like to roost. And that's a nest. So usually it's by accident that you find a nest. Wind is blowing. Don't forget, there's no leaves on the trees when they're nesting. So sometimes you could just see that they're little ear tufts, and they're not real ears. They're just tufts that are blown in the wind there. And you could see them nesting there. The DEP really, my friends at the DEP really don't like these guys. Really don't like them, because they'll actually feed on some threatened and they don't care if species is threatened and endangered. They all taste like chicken to them, I guess. So it could be endangered peregrine falcons. They'll take the babies at night. We know right here on Broad Avenue that we have osprey nests. We know that they kill the baby ospreys out of the nest. That's just kind of what they do. That's the way nature works. And you can usually tell when they're in the neighborhood, because you find things with no heads. I know this is gruesome, but so a lot of times you'll find, I can tell you that right out here one year, I was picking up rabbits with no heads. And as soon as I saw the rabbits with no heads, I knew there was great horned owls, but I would take the bodies of the rabbits and throw them away, because I didn't want people to think there was some weird cult going over there. So if the food is abundant, they love the brains. And that's what they'll feed on. So you can find ducks with no heads, you can find birds with no heads, and that's how you know that there's these guys around. What's that?
Why owls are wise.
Yeah, brains, good food, high protein, high fat, get those babies. Yeah. That's artificial nest, and we do that sometime. That was out in Smith's Woods in Secaucus at the NZSA. Just made this figuration, and you got to fill it with sticks and stuff to attract them, because again, they don't make their own nest, and they used it. And we have a new one that's put up near Northern Saw-whet and Little Ferry, so we'll see if this winter they use it. But they do use these artificial things. And you can't put up a nest. They don't use a cavity nest. They use these kind of, you have to make it like it's abandoned nest. And they do use it. And they that's a baby. So, yeah. Some great horn baby pictures are all ours, but there's some baby pictures on here I just had to put in that I got from other sources, because I just want to show you what the babies look like. And you could vote on what owl has the best pajamas, the baby. That's pretty good, right? This guy. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? That's what he says. So that's a barn owl, threatened species in the state of New Jersey. And I'll tell you about the very first one that I saw, and it was in Teterboro Woods when I was young, and my brother was with me, and I just happened to look about 15 feet up in a tree, and that guy was looking right down at me. And the first thing I know that sticks in your mind are those dark black eyes. And I could see right away why owls are spooky to people, because he really looked cool. And I remember pointing up and showing my brother, I said, there it is, and 15 feet up, it was so well camouflaged he couldn't even see it. It had to look like 10 times before he found it. But they're an owl of lowland, wetland woods, and they were doing real well in the state one time until wetlands started to be drained, until they started to take their habitat, and now they're a threatened species. They are doing better, but still not to the numbers that they should be. It's all about the habitat, all about this specific habitat that they're in. And they'll feed a lot on frogs and snakes and some of the wetland creatures. But they'll use a cavity nest. They'll nest in a hole in a tree. And sometimes in a box, if you can get a big box up for them. But again, so they're in an area with great horns, they're not going to be there long. Either they're going to get chased out, or they're not going to be around long. But they are really a cool owl. And so the places that we found them in Teaneck over the years, not nesting, but we have definitely seen them. And they aren't the area. But there's lowland wetland ones, 1 to 5 acres. And that one was in Northern Saw-whet and Little Ferry. And you can see, when you look for them, you're just looking for that image, right? So that was way out in a real cloudy morning. And just scanning the trees, you look for a weird shape. And if you're a little experienced birder, you know that shape is not a great horn. That's big, you know that's a barred owl. So you mentioned the habitat. Northern Saw-whet is a lowland, wetland, wooded habitat. And that's where they're often seen. You can screech owl. Now, you can hear that, it doesn't screech. And they are more common than you think in New Jersey and right in our area. And they're a small owl, maybe 8 or 10 inches big. But don't make a mistake, all these owls are really tough and take down prey much bigger than themselves. So it may look sweet and innocent and harmless, but if you're a bat, if you're a snake, or even insects, or a small bird, or even a big bird, they'll take it down. And there's 2 phases. There's a red phase and a gray phase, but it's the same species. And it sounds like a horse whinny to me if you ever hear them, right? And yeah, 8.5, 10 inches sometimes. But it is suburban too, but they like it more. They will nest in backyards, but it has to be more heavily wooded, right? It has to be a more wooded area. And that's, I'm sticking his head out of the box there. And this was just sent to me just yesterday, in fact. My friend's husband was going up the tree to clean out the box, and that guy was looking back at him. And she emailed me right away and said, oh, there's a red-faced owl. And then I said, well, don't clean it out, just leave him alone. But a lot of times with the screech owls, you put up 2 boxes, because sometimes the male likes to sit in one and look at the female in the other, and sometimes one of the boxes they'll use like a refrigerator. So if food is abundant, they'll store it, and you could find things like bats and tasty things like cardinals, the other red meat, you know. I had to. But so she has another box there. When she texted me back later on the next day, she said, oh, I think the owl moved to that other box. I said, you better check, because my bet is you have 1 owl in one box and 1 owl in the other. 2 to 6 eggs. Now this should be called the screech owl, the bone owl. And this is just a different kind of owl. This guy will breed like all the time. I mean, you know, we got confused when one of our people found babies in like in middle of like December. Like, what are babies doing out there now? But if you read about them, they just breed. That's what they do. And when I was growing up, meadows, they were pretty common. They were kind of all over, right? Now they're on the threatened list, and they're really, really disappearing for a lot of reasons. No, they're disappearing in meadows, or like the woods edges. They like to nest in cavities, which are disappearing. Could be a lot to do with pesticides and insecticides, a lot of reasons. But it is a very, very cool owl. Monkey face owl, hearts, all kinds of names. Now, I can tell you, one of the early encounters I had when I was camping at the Delaware Water Gap, and with a few guys, and I heard that screeching, you know, just going off over the tent, and my brother-in-law, who was with me at the time, I just woke up and I saw him in the corner of the tent with a flashlight and an axe. And he didn't know what was going on. And I said, go to bed. It's a barn owl screeching at you. No, there's something. So I went to sleep. I don't know what he did, but. And that's 2 to 18, and they have a lot of babies. But they're really, really disappearing, and you're going to see. I think the state put a lot more focus on them in the coming years with projects and nest monitoring, because they're really You know, it's very insidious when things start to disappear, and if you grew up and you saw all these creatures, it seems like now you see them, now you don't, right? And it's not really that fast, but sometimes it seems like that. So sometimes it happens so much, and then you got to play catch up trying to do things to help them come back. I was over at the Meadowlands. That was actually in an old building that was in the Meadowlands area, an old warehouse, an old huge warehouse. And that actually flew out of this warehouse, and we were doing the Christmas count there. And this huge warehouse, probably not as big as a warehouse they have nowadays, but pretty big, and it was abandoned. And we walked with some of the people from the Meadowlands Commission and NJSEA. We walked into this warehouse, and you were crunching on owl pellets, just as many as you could see, and every one had a rat in it. So you know, they were certainly cleaning up those rats, natural exterminators. And he wasn't happy that we disturbed him out of the building there. But and this is what they're doing in South Jersey. This is the projects they use in these boxes, and hopefully they'll bring those projects up here. They along the coastal areas, because the coastal areas have a lot of fields and marshes, and they like to hunt mice over those fields. So this is smaller than a great horn, and for the most part, this is a winter visitor. And they're so secretive, they probably do breed in some places in New Jersey. It's just very, very hard to find. So they are, I don't know if they're listed as threatened or endangered, but, so these will roost in groups, and no other owls will do that. And usually in like cedar trees or conifers. So you might come out in your backyard one day if you have a nice evergreen tree and look in it, and you might see 3 or 4 of these guys looking back at you. Just they're very, very quiet, and unless you really disturb them, they're not going to go anywhere. And they really, and again, listen for the other birds mobbing it. And if you want, so I'll tell you what we used to do when we were kids. But you know, other kids do other things nowadays. But growing up in the Meadowlands, we would go out on a moonlit night and do this. Imitate a wounded mouse. And it worked. They would come right in. And then if you wanted to really have nothing to do, you got an old rabbit fur, tied it on a string, and did that, and ran through the fields with it at the owl station. That's what we did, so. But it's about crow-sized. Yeah, it's all about the habitat, always about the habitat loss. But for the most part, you consider it a winter visitor. And they puff up. All the owls do is puff up to scare you, so they look twice as big.
It works.
Yeah. Now those are nice pajamas, right? And that's over at the Meadowlands in one of the cedar trees. That again, you know, I bet you a lot of people that are at the court and Mill Creek are wandering down the trails and never even look in the trees and see these guys looking back at you. Sure you know. It sounds like a dog bark. So again, this used to be an owl that nested in New Jersey along the coastal areas, but because we basically devastated our coastal areas, we lost that kind of habitat. They don't nest here any longer. Even in New York State, they're an endangered species also. So for the most part, it's a winter visitor, and they will hunt at dusk. So these are owls that you could see, you know, before it gets dark. In 1979 was the last documented nest. And then ground nesters. So when they come from when they're a grassland bird or come from the north, you know, tundra areas, there's no trees, they're ground nesters. And you know, so not only the habitat loss, but higher amounts of things like raccoons, rats, fox will prey on those ground nesting. Tough as they are, they really can't fight off all those predators all the time. And that's so you see the breeding territory for the most part is way up north. non-breeding and year-round, so we're getting them. We're getting on winter visitors. 1 to 11 eggs. That's at the Court Park over on Disposal Road, where we usually get them in the winter. And that's just a hunt. And again, this is just at dusk that you can see them hunting over the fields, and it's pretty neat. Now, which one you could tell is the owl? You got a couple of harriers in there, but you could tell the owl's in the middle. How? Because of those rounded wings. Right? The little saw-whet owl. Why does it get the name saw-whet? Well, it sounds like a wet sharpening wheel. And all these comparisons we have are old things. I don't know, just the other day we're out comparing an eagle to an ironing board. Who knows what an ironing board is? Then, we have a red-breasted nuthatch to a tin whistle. What the heck? We've got to find new comparisons or something. But that's how it gets its name, they think. But that's a tiny little guy, robin-sized. And again, it'll take a bird much bigger than itself. Again, it looks a little harmless little thing. And they are little. I'll show you how little they are. Cavity nested. They may, on occasion, breed in New Jersey. But again, it's so secretive that it's really hard to tell. And that's how small they are. And that was one of our events, walks over the Hudson. Sitting on a clipboard there, taking notes. 4 to 10 eggs. They're usually ones for the best pajama contest. And you remember the Rockefeller, a couple of years back in the tree at Rockefeller Center, which I think got wrapped up in the tree and so it's probably just migrated into the, and they do have big migrations when they do well up north, or the food doesn't produce. That's what usually causes these winter eruptions for birds that come down, that usually don't come down far north, and that's what they'll do. So we get them on our Christmas count each year, so they are around. So everybody loves a snowy owl. That's our biggest owl, and that one, because it comes from the high Arctic, will hunt during the day. So when it comes to gets pushed out of the north, and they come down usually for two reasons. Either the lemming population isn't good, which is what they feed on, most little rodents, or they do so well that year that the young have to come down and find food this far south. And because they're in the tundra areas, they have to come down and find the same habitat. So they're usually at the Meadowlands, Liberty State Park, down in South Jersey, along the coastal air parks, and they will draw crowds like forever because people just love them. And with Harry Potter, I got to tell you that I got a call one year from a mother who wanted to know where to buy their child a snowy owl. And I said, first of all, it'd be illegal. Second of all, he'd kill your kid. So, and so I read a study of somebody that was doing a study on the nesting grounds, and he had his partner was a big Airedale, and they use Airedales to hunt lions, and tough dog if anybody had an Airedale. Well, one of those guys pinned the Airedale to the ground, so it's really, really a tough bird. So we're talking about the great horns and being the most powerful bird. So an eagle's talons, and I've held eagles in my hand, so those talons will get about 400 pounds per square inch of pressure, 400 pounds. A great horn, almost double, 720 pounds. So it could squeeze, it's just really, really strong bird. Yeah, and it is the biggest owl. And again, a ground nester, male and female. And that's at the Court Park a few years back. Flying right across the water there and looking in the window, checking things out. The city in the background. 3 to 11 eggs. Hudson County, like Liberty State Park, they'll show up. That's Disposal Road in the Meadowlands. And everybody's looking at, sometimes I spot a plastic bag and they think it's an owl. Sometimes it's an owl that you think is a plastic bag. And, probably the worst behaviors happen with this owl, that people just want to get a picture and they'll either run up to it. Some really, people will just try, I've seen them try to scare it into the air so they can get a good picture. It's really, they do really horrible things. So with any bird, there's always a lot of ethics involved, whether you just have binoculars or whether you have a camera. It's always about keeping the bird safe and being respectful, and especially the owls, which are very vulnerable. I know we all want to get close, so we all want to look, but always got to think of them first. They've come a long way. So here's an owl rescue. Where's Tammy? Tammy, there you are. So I got a call, I guess it was a year before last, of an owl by the ball field in Richfield Park, right? And I went over there. It was really tough to find. And usually, owls fledge, they wind up on the ground first. And then they can climb the trees. They can climb right back up the tree and to safety. So it's really probably the last thing you want to do. You only want to do it if you have to, is try to rescue them. Really, the parents will feed it, parents will guard it. But when we found this poor guy huddled against the steps, we saw the nest, no parents around. No parents at all. We don't know what happened. So Tammy was nice enough to take this. What did you name it, Tammy?
Friday, because it was on Good Friday.
And so yeah, she took it home, and she got it to the Raptor Trust the next day. But it's one of those things. And they'll, when they're stressed, or they'll clack at you, make this clacking sound, even if they're up in a tree. And they'll make this clacking sound at you when they're alarmed or to scare you off. So, we didn't know what was going on with it, but it did well. And so this was we knew where an active nest was. And so this is the fellow from the Raptor Trust who brought a ladder and climbed the tree to put this bird up on a branch in the tree near the other nest. And so this was the two babies from the original nest. And so lucky for us that owls can't count. Because I'm sure the mother was there, 1, 2, 1, 2. But so she fed all three, and they did fine. So it was a successful rescue. So it was one of those lucky ones. They don't all work out that well, but this one did. And helping out. We got to get into we got to talk about some bad stuff too, unfortunately. And this is a barred owl that was found dead right in Richfield Park also. And one of the worst things for these guys is rat poisons. And we really, really got to do something on a statewide level to ban these rat poisons. I mean, if you ever picked up a bird, or whether it's a red-tailed hawk, whether it's an owl that has poison by secondary poison, rats eat the poison, they eat the rat, and that's really it for them. And it's really, really got to do. So there's really no need to have some of these rat poisons out. They're all less bad ways to take care of rodents, and typical rat poison is not it. It's really bad news. And this was dead from fishing line. And this was fishing line right here on the overpack. And so you wouldn't think that it just strangled itself from a fishing line hanging from a tree that a fisherman left over a branch of a tree. And of course there I had to go out in a boat and cut it down. And so we just took that picture to show people, all these dangers of this poor thing. Fishing line was probably invisible, got caught up in it, and that was it. And actually, not too long after that, there was an eagle cut at a fishing line, I think by that same tree. So I think the county actually removed that tree now. But so there's a lot of dangers to these guys, especially in suburbia. So how to help? Well, keep some dead trees up is important. Nest boxes if you can, and if you have the right species. Keep your cats indoors and dogs leashed, especially if there's baby owls on the ground. Of course, your cats could be lunch too, but so we don't want them to become owl food. And so don't pick it up. Let somebody know. The fledglings will wind up on the ground. You know, it's always that problem, like that area in Richfield Park. There were no parents around. There were people with dogs and kids and bicycles playing. That hour was not going to last the night if we didn't do something. But in a wooded area, usually they're fine. They'll get back up and do their thing. It's all about preserving habitat. It's all about, that's what we really come to here, you know. I don't care what species it is. We're here in New Jersey that we're going to reach the point of build out, where everything that's built on is built on, and everything that's preserved is preserved. And it's really a fight for every acre now. And you can see what's happening with the warehouses all over, which is like our state bird now is the warehouses. And they're building just everywhere. And those areas that we do have a compromise, thank God for places like here at the creek and other places, but it's really a struggle. The land is worth so much money. In order to preserve land, you gotta have a willing seller and a willing buyer, right? And the county or the state just doesn't have the money a private industry does, and it's really it's really tough out there, but not much of a choice. The Raptor Trust is a great place, that probably premier raptor rehabilitation place probably in the country. And owls are not pets, obviously. So a little about us, we do free nature walks, so you come out and join us on Sunday, but we're somewhere at least twice a week. All our walks are always free. And this is the Meadowlands Birding Festival, which is coming up October 5th. And we're going to have live raptor shows. We'll have owls and all kinds of birds of prey, so come out and see that in nature walks. It's a great day and it's all free. So it's right there at the Court Park. And Eagle Festival is coming up January 11th at the same place, which is really a blast, a great day. Same thing with live birds of prey, and eagle walks and talks, and all kinds of fun stuff. Educational programs that Marie does right here. And there's a shameless plug from another shameless plug from my book. And I do have some available. They're like $5 each, cheap. And I have some with me if you want them. And look, conservation is about community and kindness. Look, and you know, if ever there's something that can bring us together, it's got to be conservation and wildlife, right? I mean, you know, we bird out with people every weekend for years and years. I don't know what they do. I don't know who they vote for. I don't care. It's all about coming together and enjoying nature. And good night and thank you. Any questions at all?
You were talking about the one bird fledging. What does fledging exactly mean?
Oh, when it leaves the nest. So they fledge, either they fly out of the nest or some birds jump the nest, but it just means when they leave the nest, they're big enough when they are mature enough to leave the nest. It's fledging time, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You talked about the unbalanced holes for the ears.
Yeah.
Do owls typically hunt by sound or by sight?
You know, sound is more important, right? Sound, so that's the way they really find stuff. That excellent sight, you know, they could pick up so much light in the dark. But when it comes down to it, they're really trying to not prey with they can't, you don't really have, for the most part, total darkness. But it's pretty dark out there sometimes. And they could see very well, but I think they're dependent more on their hearing. Because, like I said, if it's a rainy night, for the most part, they can't hear anything and they're not hunting much. They're going to wait till the morning if the rain stops. So those ears, that hearing, again, they could find stuff under the snow. They could hear stuff under the leaves. They don't even have to see it. They know exactly where it is. Yeah. Yeah.
How big a territory does a great horned owl have?
You know, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that especially in suburbia. You know, it's hard to tell. I can tell you that at least out here at Tina Creek, which is what are we doing, 28 acres, something like that, there's only going to be one pair out there. You know, there's not going to be two pairs. There's probably not even going to be another pair across the street. So, but that doesn't mean there wouldn't be another one, say, down the road. So territories in suburbia may be more limited to or constrained by what's around it than actually square feet or square miles. But it's a pretty big territory. It's a big bird. I mean, it's going to defend a big territory. Of course, it has to feed its young and it needs a lot of food. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Do the talons on owls molt like snakes molt their skin? Do talons molt?
The talon? No. I mean, it's like your fingernails. So if they break, they can grow back, but it's not really. I mean, they do molt their feathers, which is important. But and that's why you can find, you see owls. They're in a territory. When you could walk around that territory, and a lot of times find an owl feather if you know around the area where they are. Yeah. But those talons are that's if you ever see those things, that's scary stuff. You got it, right? And Tammy handles feeding the owl at Flat Rock Brook, and he'd wear big leather gloves, and you just gotta be real careful. When I help band the bald eagles, the state won't take any chances. They'll get tape and tape their talons up because they're like razor blades, and they'll just cut their arm right open. So when they're banded them, they're not going to fool around. They take that blue tape and tape their big feet out. Yeah, serious stuff there. Yeah.
What's the wingspan of the great horn?
The wingspan, I think, is about 4 feet. Somewhere around 3.5 to 4 feet. Females always being bigger. Yeah. Big bird. It's a big bird. Unmistakable when it flies. Yeah.
Other than the owl that you mentioned that breeds all the time.
Yeah, barn owl.
Thank you. What are the months that you would find them nesting and breeding?
Probably all the time. That's a weird thing about them.
You mean all the owls in general?
That's the only owl that'll do that. The other owls are, let's say the great horned will start nesting in January. They'll find its mate. Screech owls maybe a little later, March and into April. Barred owls, probably February, they'll begin nesting or so. Yeah, but the barn owls, it's weird. They're different, and they'll just keep breeding. If they, you would think the population would be better being they breed like that, but but they, like I said, we some folks discovered baby owls crying for their parents, like in December. Doesn't make any sense until we found out that they just do that. They just keep going. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Incubation time from laying of the eggs and fray?
It depends, the bigger bird, the longer. I think probably from incubation time to they fledge for a great horn is probably like 2.5 months. So it's a long time, 2.5, 3 months. Yeah, so they, so they may hatch in maybe 5-6 weeks, and then they have to grow. And they grow pretty quick, but the bigger bird just takes a longer time. So usually, if they're on eggs in February or so, you'll see that babies flapping around, and usually like probably May or so on there. So it takes a while. And it's shorter time for the smaller birds, but they also have to, and usually the rule of thumb is the bigger bird, the longer they live. And I think some great horns have lived up to 30 years. So they live a long time. Yeah.
So where we live, we have a lot of turkeys rest in the trees. Do they coexist with the owls?
Yes, for food. Yes. So the turkeys are a tough bird. But I'll tell you what the great horn does. The turkeys and the great horn will land next to them at night and do this. Walk them right off the branch till they hit the ground, and that's the end of them. Because the turkey's not seeing well at night, and it's just going to knock them out of the tree and have a turkey dinner. They could take very big birds. Like I said, they're tough. If you're gonna you know, mess with a peregrine falcon, you know, they don't really care. They don't, you know, even like that little saw-whet owl could take a pigeon, you know. But saw-whet's that big, pigeons that big. Yeah, right? There's really tough birds. That's what they do. Yeah.
Is there any adult instructions of the chicks on how to hunt and catch, or are they just left to their own devices?
No, they'll feed them for, even when those babies, you saw them up in a tree, they'll feed them. You know, so I don't know if there's, you know, it's observation and it's instinct.
Yeah.
You know, they watch them and they bring them food, and eventually they're gonna hunt by themselves. Eventually they're screaming for food and the parents will say, well, you're on your own.
Right.
You know, so they probably, you know, it's an interesting thing, when they reintroduced the bald eagle, they didn't have any parents around. The first ones that were reintroduced, because they were hack raised and just kind of, you know, fed when they were babies and then released, and they hunted fine. So a lot of it's probably instinct. I mean, sure, some of it's watching, and the survival is better when they're fed. But I'm sure eventually it's just going to depend on them. And then, you know, they're going to leave the territory. The parents will probably feed them for a few months after they leave the nest, but eventually, you know, you can't have all those owls in one territory. So eventually those babies are going to have to go somewhere, you know, go off and find their own territories, find their own nests. And it's not going to be, nesting time comes, the parents aren't going to tolerate them in their nesting territory, you know. That's the way it works, yeah.
What size we can make the nest? And do we need special permit for that?
To make a nest, no. To handle any of the birds, yeah, but to make a nest, no. So for a great horn, you just, there are instructions online, and you just making mesh and really putting it on sticks and finding a tree to mount it on strongly and then fill it with sticks. When you get into the other owls, like screech owls, you could buy a screech owl box. You could buy a barred owl box. Screech owl boxes are maybe that big, but when you get into barred owl boxes, they're pretty big. And there's nothing really commercially to buy for a great horn. You really have to make that yourself.
I don't know what kind I have in my property. I hear them, I don't.
Well, if you hear them, you could identify them by the sound. And depending on where you live, you know, 9 times out of 10 in suburbia, it's going to be a great horn. But depending on where you live, if you live, you know, by some more wooded wetland areas, or if you live in a more heavily wooded area, it could be screech owls. But screech owls doesn't have that hooting sound. It doesn't really have that hoot sound, or great horn, or the barred owls. Anybody else?
If those tufts on their head aren't by their ears, do they serve a purpose?
Yeah, probably just to attract a mate. You know, look at me. You know, but yeah, there's probably no other. You know, who knows? I mean, it could be something where the other birds or babies could see them easier. I'm sure usually these things have multi-purposes. Most of the time, they're for just to show off mating, or, you know, maybe to show the other owls I'm a great horn, don't eat me, something like that. You know. Anybody else? I missed? No? No? Everybody? All right, so thank you so much for coming. So,